Welcome to the Leaders of B2B podcast, a weekly show where we bring you interviews and in-the-weeds expertise with today's B2B experts and thought leaders. You can see more about today's episode and guest by visiting our website at leadersofb2b.com. This episode is brought to you by Content Allies. We help B2B companies launch revenue-generating podcasts. We schedule interviews between you and your ideal prospects and strategic partners. You show up for engaging conversations, we handle everything else. Ready to build a podcast that grows your business in just 1 hour per week? Reach out to us at contentallies.com.
Genesis Capunitan, welcome to the show. Love if you would give a little intro of yourself and your work. We're going to make this quick and powerful one, and because meetings happen and you got to jump. So I wanted to get your expertise because you have a lot to share on the B2B.
Yeah. And so, my name's Genesis Capunitan. I'm based in the Los Angeles area. I'm currently the head of B2B at Interpublic Group Initiative. So Initiative is, I don't know, globally 7,000 person media agency, part of IPG, Interpublic Group, part of 50,000 people in terms of a larger holding company. So prior to Interpublic Group, I worked for a global software company called Bluebeam, and I was the global demand gen director. So I was on the client side. Also worked, and also part of the Adobe family. I worked at Cisco as well. And then creative agencies, DDB Worldwide, as well as Razorfish. So really I've been focused on B2B for the last between 10 and 15 years or so. And it would really witnessed the evolution of B2B. A lot of it had to do with data and technology, which a lot of marketing and media companies have been experiencing kind of evolution because of that, but especially in the B2B space. So that is a quick, in a nutshell, some of the things, or my title, my background. Currently, I advise on T-Mobile for Business, based out of Seattle. I work currently with also advising Amazon Web Services, and obviously their cloud B2B products, Intuit, a slew of their products, including TurboTax, KPMG, as well as Salesforce. So my company, Initiative, and IPG is the agency of record. I oversee and help advise, I don't know, probably close to collectively $3.5-4 billion in media every year, every 12 months. Everything you could think of, from out of home to direct to digital to broadcast to CTV, on the brand side, on the demand gen side, anything related to sales activation or immediate sales activation or short-term sales activation. My media plans and planning affect that as well. So anyway, long story short, that is a little bit of me and the current things I'm working on. So.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, it's so pertinent to, our audience to think about the broad picture of potential paid media, from any size, right? It's obviously a lot of people don't get to play like Intuit or, T-Mobile, like that's huge scale. But then, everybody is dealing with this on their own kind of order of magnitude, and B2B paid media is hard. Like what are the main things to think about there, from your expertise, kind of regardless of company size?
I think, as I create and optimize plans along with strategy teams, creative teams, media teams, investment and partnerships teams, there's really a mini playbook that I adhere to as much as I can. A lot of it has to do with challenges related to B2B. So there's fundamental differences between B2B and B2C. One of the fundamental differences is the fact that the buying committee for a lot of these B2B companies that are buying products and services from other companies has probably tripled in the last 10 years. It used to be 5 people part of the buying committee, now it's 25.
Right.
And and the deal sizes are larger. The sales cycles are longer too as well. The technology, the proliferation of technology, applied to almost any industry, whether it be transportation, logistics, financial services, to tech, to even management consulting for that matter, is also making the decision making process more challenging. The key things that I'll focus on right now in terms of challenges is number one is, there's a lot of discussions about should you focus your budget on brand versus short-term sales activations. Because I need to meet my lead goals every quarter. I get it. Um, but ad
Mm.
likability is extremely important in terms of thinking about that as a challenge. The dark funnel, I don't know, I could talk about that in a second, as well as the proliferation of the buying committee. And then the kind of recent, LinkedIn B2B Institute reports that have been coming out, the 95-5 rule, as well as the 7-11-4 rule, which is part of a ZMOT exercise, zero moment of truth, that Google published on B2B buying journey and in the buying dynamics. So there's a lot of those type of challenges and that's just a handful of challenges off the top of my head that seems to be top of mind awareness for a lot of B2B companies and their marketing teams to work against and try to mitigate some of the dangers of not dealing with those issues. But that's really my kind of starting point. What are the changing challenges and dynamics in the B2B space? And then secondly, go through from my standpoint some of the key things that any brand marketing team on a B2B space should really look at to see if there's key things that it's touching on. Number one, obviously brand. How much are you investing in it? Do you have the right KPIs? I'm a big fan of OKRs, objectives and key results that are kind of the umbrella objectives where KPIs sit under. A lot of organizations overlook the value of doing the OKR KPI structure. Intel invented that structure maybe 20 years ago. It's
Yeah.
finding new fame.
And Google
Yeah,
advocate,
I'm
right?
an advocate, working with my clients. And when I worked on the client side, you know, uh, basically, generating that framework for my teams for on the client side as well. But the key things that seem to be popping up now in terms of challenges um, seem to also, it's important to marry specific key elements of the B2B program, which is obviously brand, like what I mentioned a second ago. It's content syndication, it's endemic planning as well. And of course, ABM that comes up. Endemic, I get a lot of questions about that actually. Endemic is really heavy media publications focused on specific industries. Like there's a company called Industry Dive that has different vertical publications like Banking Dive, CFO Dive, really heavy specific areas. They also have transportation and logistics publications as well. And there's a whole slew of them in different industries. They're not huge in the sense of the numbers that you would get from a Bloomberg, which is more non-endemic because they cover many different industries. But we find a lot of success in endemic partners with their webinars and their events, even white paper circulation specifically. Hey, download this white paper, give me your email address, download this white paper, and various B2B companies can actually lead nurture that over a period of time. I find a lot of lower funnel conversion opportunities. There's quality or there's hardly any high volume leads for those endemic programs, but the ones that do show up, raise their hand, show up to a webinar, download something, show up to an event, anything that the publication is sponsoring at a given period of time, they convert better in terms of that. But so that's one thing on the endemic side. Brand is always a funny type of topic because people don't see that as an investment. And in fact, it is an investment. And when I say brand, I mean having a company not just invest in it, but understand the brand architecture, which is really comprised of really 6 key elements: attributes, benefits, culture, user, values, and personality. That's the kind of the 6 framework type of way you should be looking at your brand. Gives you an idea of your target audience, what the benefit, your not just your unique differentiators from competitors, but why your offerings are defensible as well, which I think that this kind of brand architecture provides. But strong brand takes a long time to invest over a period of time, and to achieve KPIs related to make sure that you're actually moving the needle in brand awareness, or your brand equity, I should say, is unaided awareness brand scores, aided awareness brand scores as well. We've used ComScore, you could use Nielsen. But as you see upticks in your brand equity and brand awareness, you start seeing changes in your market share as well as your conversion rates. If you have a strong brand, it provides a gift that keeps on giving. Shorter sales cycles, higher deal flow in terms of the deal sizes specifically. Strong brand equity also too is your current clients tend to not leave you. So retention rates, and engagement rates that tend to be better as well. There's a lot of benefits of having a strong brand in the B2B space, which a lot of B2B companies unfortunately overlook because they're really focused on short-term sales activation, meaning their goals, quote unquote, for the month, quarter. So I'll just pause here for a second.
Mhm.
I just vomited a bunch of information, so I apologize. I'll pause. So
No, no, it's great. I mean, I love that you were succinctly able to kind of capture the vast complexity of, and this is why
yeah.
it's challenging, right? It's you can get to the point where sometimes I'm amazed because I'll talk to $100 million companies that have one marketing lead trying to stare at a blank piece of paper to make, but let's make 2024's goal. What are we going to do? And it's like budgets are constrained, pretty much across the
Mhm,
board.
mhm,
And, we're getting in a lot of this kind of conversation about I'm being asked to do more with
mhm,
less, to have high impact, which is, to your point, is too often confused with short-term impact and not, like sort of the important, not urgent, So how do you, if you're maybe under resourced, how do you take that apart in a way that, you can get to, first principles and kind of see
mhm,
movement, short term, midterm, long
mhm.
term, like what's the best advice there?
On a limited budget, I'm a big fan of a couple of ways of doing things. I mean, I think one is so the classic argument is, I got a tight budget. Is it brand versus demand gen? So, that
Mm,
topic comes up a lot. So first and foremost, I see them one as the same. Demand gen is inbound marketing, as you know, as probably a lot of your audience listeners actually know. But it includes events and includes white papers and content syndication and paid search, and it's basically inbound things to obviously gain attention to drive people to a converting platform like your website, for instance. And then you could focus on conversion rate optimization, CRO on your website, blah blah blah. But the themes of the type of events you do, or the themes that you do for a webinar, for instance, as an example, that generates leads, or the themes of your white papers. Um, if you're an aerospace company, doing a white paper on the importance of sustainability, for instance, or those type of things, all of those things are actually opportunities to extend what your brand stands for. And like I mentioned earlier, those brand attributes. Um, so if there's a particular theme every quarter that feeds off that brand platform that you should have created previously, tying all those themes together is an important thing to do. Your social media posts, all the way your content syndication, the events you show up to, or even the webinars that you sponsor. But a lot of it has to do with your OKRs. If there is, and it depends on what you offer too as well. I mean, some B2B companies are great in providing a 30-day free trial, a 14-day free trial. That's a great way to generate leads, obviously. That's a great lead generator. If you have the opportunity to do that, if you're a software tech company, then there's a lot of investment that you can do around that drives people to the download and making sure that your marketing automation tools are actually working properly. But on a side note, but everything from paid social, paid search has always been, even though it's kind of not the sexiest thing, it is. There's a strong correlation between strong lead growth, especially if you have a free demo or kind of not a free demo, but a demo opportunity or a free trial situation. That type of thing. There's a strong correlation between changes in your organic search results, which people obviously, that shows that there's top of mind awareness about what you're doing, as well as paid search, which supports that. And the great thing about that is it's highly measurable and adjustable and those type of things. Also, the lower funnel tactics about, especially showing up to events and webinars, sponsoring that. Those type of activities generate a lot of short-term conversion rates. People always, well, maybe 10 years ago talked about the importance of content and content is king. And I kind of agree with that, which, the white papers and those type of things. But there's so much white papers out there. There's so much a proliferation of every B2B company offering, a slew of white papers and those type of things. But again, going back to your brand, what makes you unique and why is your uniqueness defensible? Whatever that difference or the defensibility is should really drive the type of content you create. So
Right.
that's something to think about as well. I think with the bigger brands, when they get to above the line advertising, whether it be broadcast or CTV or even podcasting, obviously podcasting, radio broadcast, uh, those have obviously more opportunities to build a brand over a longer period of time. Like think of an Intel that built up a brand over a long period of time. Slack basically went from zero awareness to everybody knew who they were. And the interesting thing about B2B companies that I found for the last few years is they're so focused on telling people what they do, right? IBM, we basically have the fastest computing power, the fastest cloud solution for you, that type of thing. So there, a lot of B2B companies initially were focused on this is who we are and this is what we provide. But I see a lot of companies, and I think Slack is one of them. One of the reasons why they're so successful is because they stopped doing that, telling that brand story, but actually telling a bigger story that basically said, we're not going to tell you the services that we provide, but we're going to show you the type of company you could become if you use our technology. So in Slack's case was pretty interesting because they said, hey, you actually, email could be potentially your enemy, right? So we're going to create something that could actually could replace email. And on top of sending messages, you could have immediate, you send, real-time documents and you can, for editing, you could have, a quick, a Slack group, video meeting together. You could, collaborate, on something in real time regarding a project, but Slack kind of said, "Hey, there's an alternative to email, and you could be a different type of company by using our technology, a better type of company by using our technology, and casting a vision of what that looks like versus a B2B brand just saying this is what we provide."
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those of us at the bottom of the funnel certainly
Yeah.
appreciate, like whatever education and brand credibility can be brought along because that's, that assumptive, narrative driven, so you want
Y
the thing, like that's demand creation that's
Yeah.
perfect there because now I can start to get into, your particular case if I'm talking to you one to one, and how in the you talked about content, how are you thinking about what I'm hearing from most enterprise, larger size B2B type of marketers is this um, acknowledgement now, I think more than I had in the last few years, sort of authentic video for, and I would call your I call your webinar, that, and maybe your podcasting and video, and, it's just all those things. There's a proliferation of, there's just too much writing and reading and people don't consume that
Mhm.
way. So, does that fit into the whole marketing mix
Yeah, I
then?
mean, the mixed marketing model for sure. Obviously every company has a different variation of that mix, obviously depending on what they do and what they provide. But but yeah, content in various forms, not just white papers, but video
Yeah,
content, obviously podcasting, which is I spent 4 hours yesterday at Spotify, in their new Los Angeles office. And then it was great because they took me to their, went to the basketball game, the LA Clippers, and they took me to their little club there, which was terrific as well. But it was a great experience. But we talk obviously a lot about podcasting at Spotify, and there's a lot of video
sure.
associated with um, podcasting now too as
Yeah,
well. So, and people love, and they're captured. Their attention is captured, obviously, through podcasts and those types of things. But whatever medium it is, whether it be a podcast or a video cast, or whether it be a white paper or even a webinar for that matter as well, it's the, there's obviously kind of a fine line that comes up a lot about between informative content versus being pitched, in terms of the white papers and those types of things. It's interesting to see, and I see a lot of value in companies saying, hey, look, there might be like 11 white papers on this particular subject, and some of those white papers could be very contradictory, depending on which company is saying what about, a certain type of offering or whatever. But I'm seeing a little bit of more value and traction of companies that are creating white papers or podcasts or those types of things that talk about even potentially contradictory issues in B2B marketing, but trying making sense of it. Um, and that's their value is like, here's all these different points of view. Here's our attempt or our POV to make sense of it. And actually, it's kind of a interesting type of new B2B content category called sense making, because there's so much content out there in various mediums. Is instead of having a strong POV about what your company's selling and wrapping your message or your content to help sell that, but more so taking various points of view of challenges like the ones I mentioned earlier in the podcast regarding B2B marketing and different companies that have a POV on it, and basically coalescing it, and making sense of it and creating a POV around that and a narrative and discussion around that. A lot of B2B buyers are finding a lot of relief in companies trying to do that because it helps their buying committee, mm, through their decision making process, and it kind of cuts down the confusion. But
yeah, yeah. I love that. It's just less about sort of, oh, hey, we need to educate and provide value, which is so
mm,
nebulous. It's just really like let me do that through a more discernible path of, actually, yep, making sense.
yeah,
That's like,
I mean, yeah,
let me make that
yeah,
job
I mean,
easier.
like, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
there's many competitors to, let's say, well, now Amazon Web Services, they were like the cloud,
Sure.
champion, I guess. But now, obviously, IBM has cloud solutions. Google Development Cloud has, even, I think NVIDIA is now launching a cloud solution as well. There's a lot of them, but they all talk about this is the problem that we solve of all our different products. But it'd be interesting to see companies say, "Hey, these are the different offerings and their POV of why their offering is better." But these, you know, we're trying to make sense of, you know, the cloud solution for a small SMB company, small medium size, and an enterprise or a public sector company. Those changes, those needs are going to be different. So, and this is where these companies' POVs focused on. But let's make sense of and provide context of what their solutions are and what they're pitching you. And this is kind of our sense of doing it. You see a lot of like PricewaterhouseCoopers doing kind of a grid of different providers and kind of rank them. And this is our sense of what this is, blah, blah. They don't have to be a management consulting firm like PwC, but they
Right.
can take a lesson out of their book. So, that book or that page from that lesson to say, hey, look, we're going to provide more context and sense making to this content. I That's stickier. I think at the end of the day, I think it it resonates stronger with blind communities as well. So that's something that company B2B brands should really look at when they're getting to the content, the content syndication space. So
Well, I love that. Thank you so much. I know you're up
yeah,
against a
yeah,
hard
but
stop here. So I
we
really want to thank you for coming out and those insights. And I know I learned a lot and I
yeah,
really
thank you
appreciate it.
guys for this opportunity. Have a good weekend if I don't talk to you guys.